welcome to episode 283 of Retro Encounter, RPG Fans Weekly Podcast of Many Topics. I'm Mike Sollosi, and I'm joined today by Eva Padilla.
Heyo.
And making her triumphant return after a break of something like 6 months, which is unforgivable, I say, Audra Bolt.
Hello. Sorry.
You can be forgiven. It's okay.
I was briefly upset that I haven't heard from you in so long, Audra, but now I feel much better. So, welcome back, Audra. Welcome back, Eva. We're here to talk about a game that, oddly, we have been putting off recording, maybe more than any specific episode, at least in recent memory. Because now, please correct me if I get any parts of this timeline wrong. We were brainstorming ideas for new episodes in late 2020, and I think Eva suggested Crimson Shroud, the subject of today's episode, because you have an ongoing interest in the works of Yasumi Matsuno. Does that sound about right so far?
I don't know. Is the Vagrant Story Ultimania I just got today, is that any indication of my interest? Yes.
It's an indication of incredible timing that may be cosmic indeed.
Yeah.
And I think, Eva, you mentioned it first. Then Audra, in the same chat, expressed appreciation for, like, oh, Crimson Shroud, that's a really cool game. Like, you had either already played it or were already familiar with it. Is that right, Audra?
Yeah, I'd already played it.
So Eva suggested it, Audra co-signed it, and I, it vaguely rang a bell in the back of my brain, but I couldn't really remember what Crimson Shroud was, so I briefly looked it up and thought to myself, wow, this thing is crazy. We totally should play this and do an episode on it. So we were going to do it in early 2021, then it got pushed back a month, then another month, and then another month, and now we're finally playing it in April 2021. Crimson Shroud, the 3DS eShop exclusive game from Level 5 and designed by Yasumi Matsuno, he of Tactics Ogre, Final Fantasy XII, Vagrant Story, and many other very interesting games that have a very specific kind of gameplay design and narrative flair that I think is very recognizable to people that have played as many RPGs as the three of us.
Absolutely. A very specific flavor that he brings to every meal.
Yes.
So, how are we feeling that Matsuno spice this time? Crimson Shroud came out in 2012 for the 3DS, pretty early in the 3DS's lifespan. I think it really didn't land until 2010 or 2011. And the 3DS eShop has been a successful storefront, I think. I mean, a lot of people like downloading things onto their Nintendo clams. But there aren't very many eShop exclusives to my memory. Like, it felt weird discovering that this was an eShop exclusive. Do we know many other games like that, or am I the only person that thinks it's weird?
There was the other guild game, I think, that came... I know of one, the Starship Damry.
Oh, okay.
That came out, that was a level 5, too.
Yeah,
it was under, a project umbrella for level 5 called Guild, or something along those lines.
I think that checks out. I don't really know what their guild project is, but level 5 has been a very strong 3DS and DS supporter for decades now, because they Level 5 has a real weird diverse portfolio. They started out with the Dark Cloud games on PS2. They were co-developers of a couple Dragon Quest games in a row on PS2 and DS. They made something like 7 or 8 Professor Layton games on the DS and 3DS. A comparable number of Inazuma 11 games for your anime, soccer, JRPG enthusiasts out there. Mm-hmm. And I think they're mostly a Yokai Watch machine now. And that game was a real weird one, because it was a 3DS game that sold badly, and then its anime came out, and it suddenly became a number one seller a year after, like when it was a year old already. So Level 5, big supporters of Nintendo's handhelds, so it sort of makes sense that they would at least dip their toes in the waters of 3DS shop exclusivity. And one of the end results of that is this partnership with Matsuno for a game that I'm going to have to describe in terms of other games, but is at least very interesting to talk about. So Eva or Audra, whoever wants to chime in, what's a level 5 thing that we love besides Crimson Shroud, just because I think we've somehow avoided talking about that company in 6 years of podcasting.
Well, I really love the whole. I haven't really played many of the other games in the Guild series that they had, as we had mentioned, but it was this really cool thing for the eShop where it was this sort of, there were 2 guilds, each one had 3 games, and it was this sort of boutique thing where you had these notable developers working on these games. So you had a game by Goichi Suda, you had one by Keiji Itafure, you had this one by Yasumi Matsuno. So it was like having these big developers and big names working on these smaller sort of indie budget titles. And I think it brings out some interesting parts of them where some of them kind of had some difficulty with having this smaller scale, whereas Matsuno thrived. And I think it's kind of a testament to Level 5 that they're willing to do something strange like this, something kind of like an indie rock label or something.
Yeah. All right. Now I feel extra bad for not having heard of this before, because I'm looking at a list of the games, and one of them is Attack of the Friday Monsters is described as an homage to 1970s tokusatsu, and oh boy, if there's 5 things you know about me, one of them is my love of tokusatsu. So yeah, it's a really cool idea having these small to medium-sized games, like boutique developers, made by well-known auteurs of sorts. Yeah. The more I think about it, the more I sort of like it, and it looks like most of them came out in 2012, but the 7th one in the miniseries came out a couple years later. But I mean, being a JRPG centric podcast and that's part of a JRPG centric website, I think Crimson Shroud might be the most logical game in this group to tackle. So let's move on to Crimson Shroud proper. This game, I mean, I was going to say it right out. This game feels like a tabletop campaign, like really, really strongly. From the sort of third person narration, or I should say first person narration that's clearly within the mind of a specific character, to the navigating a map that you can sort of touch and move around in, to the abundance of dice rolls with included dice rolling physics. And maybe most notably of all, every character in the game, both humanoid and monster, is a game piece, right down to having a square base and otherwise being immobile and shaking when they take damage and flipping over when they die. It's like there's a lot of visual flair and gameplay design that is so tabletop. And I don't know this 100% for sure, but this feels like a tabletop campaign that Matsuno did with some of his friends and then decided to make a video game out of. That I don't know if that's exactly true, but it feels like that.
Yeah, it certainly does, actually. I mean, just visually alone and how they incorporated the dice rolls and everything, it really kind of just makes you think that someone was playing a tabletop game one day and thought this would make a really good video game.
Yeah, and I think with that, because they tried to make it this sort of tabletop thing, it works really well within the probable budget constraints. Because if you're not doing all these fancy animations and such, you can just focus on the mechanics, and you can focus on, all you have to do is flip the piece over or make it move forward slightly, and that's pretty much the extent of the animation that you're going to need. So I think it works really well for this, and it reminds me of when I was younger doing things like playing a game like HeroScape and kind of the narratives that you'd craft from that. So
my version of that was playing Hero Quest, which is sort of a board game with some light D&D elements and RPG elements. I think the Hero Quest board game became a bit hard to find, and now like collectors jealously won't let go of their copies. Yeah, exactly. But I really think that at least part of the design philosophy going into Crimson Shroud was capturing some of the fun tactile parts of a tabletop game, especially down to the pieces and the dice rolls, because the physics of rolling dice, you can just tap A couple times to have it automatically roll, but you can use the stylus to shake the dice in your hand and release it to let go. Dice can even fall off the table if you shake it too vigorously, and a dropped die can be applied to a future roll. And like the dice rolling around on the touchpad of your DS, like they look good. Like I don't know if it's Havoc physics exactly, but it's like there is a dice rolling physics engine at work here that some effort was put into, and that's wild to me.
Did anyone accidentally roll the dice off and bonk someone on the head?
Oh, I don't know if I did roll them off the table once or twice, but I don't know if it hit one of my pieces.
You can bonk someone on the head if you really get a little wild with the dice roll. It will fly off and like bonk one of the monsters on the head. It's really funny.
Oh wow, I didn't know that.
Do they take damage? Because now I think I might need to try that.
No, it just goes, out of the dice roll and back into the sort of pool. But yeah, it's really funny when it happens though.
The game's the RPG parts of the gameplay are fairly straightforward, turn-based, but they give you a lot of skills and a lot of variables to play with. There's item melding and a huge amount of loot to collect, and armor affecting what skills you have. And there's different, like it kind of like how in Dungeons and Dragons you can have sort of a free skill and then your main skill, and to act twice during battles. Moves that are called skills in Crimson Shroud are separate from attacks or spells, so you can do a skill and a spell in one round, or a skill and an attack in one round, and having your skills synergize with the second action you're going to take, or whether you do a skill before or after your attack. All of those are considerations you can make. And my skill lists and spell lists got, I don't know, not confusing necessarily, but a little, I was a little whelmed, because like tinkering with my characters would affect my skill loadouts, and I'd have to change strategies, and I accidentally changed too many equipment slots right before a boss fight that had me missing a few key skills for that boss fight, and that's on me. But like there's just a lot of tinkering in this game, and a lot of items and loot and systems
to pay attention to.
Pay attention to for a game that's not very long. It's only my playthrough was I think less than 6 hours, like 5.5 hours. So there's a lot of effort into unusual details like dice rolling and skill mechanics for a game that I don't want to say doesn't justify them, but for a game that doesn't I would expect a long, detailed RPG to have this depth of mechanics, but instead we got an amuse-bouche of an RPG with this depth of mechanics, which is very interesting.
A little appetizer, a jalapeno popper of an JRPG.
Yeah, this is the spicy flash fried calamari of RPGs.
Perfect.
It does. I mean, it does encourage replayability with the New Game Plus, so I guess maybe they thought it extended it enough to justify.
I beat the game once and did not explore the New Game Plus deeply, but I'm assuming there's stronger enemies, different loot, and a few new story paths to unlock, or at least one new story path to unlock.
Yeah, there's one new story. I know there's one new ending.
Okay. Right.
And a new area to explore. But
yep.
So is there like a full 5th chapter of content?
Basically, I mean, it's not necessarily like a 5th chapter, I don't think, but it is like a branch that leads to that
a
basically
different outcome.
Right. It takes you past the chapter 4 of the new game, and just kind of down a different path. And yeah, but having put 12.5 hours into it or so, just because of things that we'll get to later, which are kind of frustrating, I will say that the battle mechanics do hold up, even after all that. It's just a solid system, and I love Matsuno, but he never gets crafting right. And oh my god, in Crimson Shroud, he finally makes crafting accessible. Oh my god.
Wow, I thought you were going to say this is just another like bullet in the list of bad Matsuno crafting. Because Eva, you and I were on a podcast a little less than a year ago talking about Tactics Ogre, and crafting in that thing was maddening.
Crafting in that game is pretty bad, and it has just some really weird quirks in terms of things not actually going through and your crafting just not working out. Vagrant Story is the most whack crafting system I've ever seen, where it's like, I'm going to take an axe and I'm going to meld it with an axe, and somehow I'm going to get a crossbow. How does that happen? I don't know.
And that game is so dense and mechanically, and so opaque mechanically, for the crafting to be that weird on top of everything else. Like, almost felt like Vagrant Story wasn't playing fair with me.
Yep. But this game kind of, because it's like distilled Matsuno, I feel like there's a lot of things that he tries to get away with in other games and longer games that he can't really do so here, which is a lot of times to the benefit of Crimson Shroud.
Right. So we talked about sort of what Crimson Shroud is and some of the mechanics. Let's get into the story a little bit, because one thing that I associate with Matsuno is that the worlds of his stories always feel like 10 times the size of the story you're playing. Just going into the codex section of a game like Tactics Ogre or Final Fantasy Tactics, there's so much more that happened before the events of the game or elsewhere during the events of the game that are not in the moment-to-moment text of the game. That I feel like when Matsuno designs a game, if the game's script is 50 pages, the game's lore notebook of all the information you don't see is 500 pages. You're following where I'm going, but I hope. Yeah. But that's definitely true in Crimson Shroud, because this is not a very long game. That is basically three rogues going on that took a job to find something hidden in a dungeon, and that's most of what this game is. But we get hints of political machinations between at least 4 different groups, and a legend about a king receiving gifts from God that might have been twisted over the centuries by those groups, conspiracies about magic and history. 100% Matsuno, but almost incredible that so much thought went into this kind of game for it. Just to identify a couple of those groups, chasers are sort of the term for adventurers or bounty hunters that this game uses, and your team of Jacques, Lippy, and Freya are 3 chasers. There's a group called the Senate, which are sort of the central political power of this world. The Knights of the Peace are the Senate's personal army, and the character Flint is a general or a captain in the Knights of the Peace. There's a more religious organization called the Conclave that is trying to create a divine origin or a divine justification for all of the magic and all of the weirdness that happens in this world. The Gatherers are a secret organization that collect magical artifacts, which are called gifts, and try to keep them from the Conclave and the Senate. And then the Quiche are not a delicious eggy breakfast tart, but a race of nomadic people that are somewhat spiritual in nature and connected to the world's magic in some way. And the main character, or one of the main characters, Freya, is a woman of the Quiche.
Yeah.
Or should I say Kish, just so it doesn't sound like I'm talking about the food?
Yeah, let's just go with Kish.
Okay, let's say Kish.
I usually say it's Kish, so.
But I do like my Kish with spinach and Gruyere in it.
Now, I mean, you have Kish, but how do you pronounce the one of your rogues' name who has too many vowels?
Yeah, my 5 years of taking French in high school and college want to say Jacques, but I think my brain prefers Jacques, so I just called him Jacques the whole time.
Same. Well, not the French part, Jacques. but Jacques.
All right, let's call him Jacques. Frère Jacques, dormez-vous, dormez-vous. But anyway, enough French nursery rhymes back to Crimson Shroud. Now, as you go through the dungeon, you'll get like a cutscene, not necessarily every room, but a couple times each chapter, and this game's divided into 4 chapters, that will tell you a little bit about one of the characters, or a little bit about the world's state, or a little bit about one of the world's histories, or historical events or legends that flesh out the world a little bit. And I thought all of them were pretty intriguing, and they cover a lot of ground for this being such a short game. Was there anything about this world or its politics that you found particularly interesting or noteworthy that we haven't gone over yet?
Well, I love the Kish in general, the whole concept of them and their connection to the big bad was actually pretty interesting.
Yeah, and I really like some of the flavor that they have for the Kish, and of your party, Freya is of the Kish. She
has the most personality.
Yes.
She has some of the strongest personality, I think.
Yeah, she is. Yeah, she is a bit. Her personality, she can be a bit standoffish, but she is a member of, the Kish being this ethnic minority group, and I really loved their connection to water. It reminds me a lot of these sort of like water is life movements in the United States, especially over the past 4 years over pipelines and such, but how much emphasis they place on giving water to someone else as if you're giving them life. And I really love that part about the Kish.
The Kish reminded me a little bit of, I don't know, like a little bit of like modern gypsies in how they are a persecuted minority that with a sort of an insular culture, but also kind of like kind of like desert Bedouins or the Nabatean peoples, which were a Proto-Arabic civilization that founded the city of Petra hundreds of years ago. In that they're sort of a desert people with a deep connection and to water in a way that sort of made sense to me. And maybe the Kish are based on the Nabateans because they seem to have they were the dominant civilization of the land at one point, but after their kingdom fell due to corruption from magic, other groups arose, and I think the religious conclave organization would love to keep all the Kish influence out of their history that they're trying to rewrite.
Absolutely, yeah, and with Matsuno games, as always, there is an idea of history not being what it seems in this game as well. And there's a certain faction that is controlling the mechanisms of history and how it's being told.
Yeah, I think the Gatherers, Conclave, and Senate are all sort of fighting over the history of the world to a degree. One plot point that comes up in the second half of the game is the player learns that the actual mission of Jacques and company is to locate a monk named Andalay. And they were given that mission by a high-profile senator who had some kind of connection to Andalay, like he was Andalay's second cousin or uncle or something. And when they search around and find him in this old abandoned monastery with some books missing, Jacques is able to glean that Andalay was looking through forbidden texts, found something very important, and then that important text was stolen from Andalay, and Jacques tracks and company track them down to the former Kish ruins that are the dungeon run of this story. And so it's clear that Andalay was able to find some connection or some clue towards the Crimson Shroud, which is said to be the most powerful of all magical gifts. Andalay's senator contact definitely wants it for power reasons. The Conclave wants it so they can, so for power reasons, and also to write their own version of the history. The Gatherers want it because they want to collect as many gifts as they can to prevent the Senate and Conclave from getting to them. And Yeah, it's like this game is sort of a manhunt turned bounty hunt turned treasure hunt through these ancient mysterious ruins. But Matsuno or the game's writers keep enough story sort of behind a curtain to to keep the player off balance and keep the player invested for sure. Like the more I learned about the story, the more I'm like, well, now I definitely have to see this game to the end.
Yeah, they were very great at just revealing it at a nice pace that kept you invested.
So I think we enjoy the tabletop flavor and most of the writing in this game. But let's talk about the one thing, I think we alluded to it before, that we really didn't like. And the event flagging for this game can be a little strange at times. Like sometimes you have to leave a room and re-enter a room. Okay, wow. Apologies for the technical difficulties there. We were talking about the how some of the event flagging and plot machinations of Crimson Shroud are tied to random drops, and it's probably the most frustrating part of the entire game, or maybe not probably, maybe definitely. Eva, what was your experience dealing with the random drops in Crimson Shroud?
Pain. This game does so many things right. There's a lot of things I really love about this game. There is a fatal flaw, and it is this random key item drops, because if you're going to have random drops for, like, what is it, the Sword of Kings in Earthbound or something like that, where it's like a 1 in 64 chance or something. But, if it's something that's an optional item or something that makes the game slightly easier, that's fine. For Crimson Shroud, for the new game, and for New Game Plus, there are 2 different key items that you need for story progression. And they drop from random enemies. That's a terrible design decision that I cannot defend, really. It's maybe if the chance of it dropping was higher, it would be a little bit more forgivable. But I spent 12, 13 hours into this game, and fully a fourth of that was just on one encounter in New Game Plus, trying to get this second thing for New Game Plus progression.
Yeah, I put about 16 hours in just trying to get, and a lot of it was spent just item scouring.
Yeah, I mean, I thought I had it bad with maybe a dozen times trying to get that obsidian from those skeleton mages, but this second drop of New Game Plus sounds worse.
They wanted you to suffer.
Yeah, they want you to earn that second ending, I guess. Mm-hmm. And I never saw the second ending, but let's go back to the story a little bit. At the end of the dungeon, you sort of realize that this was a trap. A woman named Abigail, who was one of the apostles of the original Kish king that first founded this thriving civilization, has been living in immortal suffering for 1,000 years, trying to lure adventurers to a fictional artifact called the Crimson Shroud, when in fact the Crimson Shroud sort of is Abigail herself. But Abigail needs a living Kish person in order to and needs to possess them in order to sort of reach her full power and sort of become. Is she trying to become a full human again, or is possessing someone of Kish ancestry just important for her to gaining her full powers? Is that really explained or understood?
I'm not sure if they ever explained it if she ever becomes fully human again. I know she just wants her powers.
Okay, she wants her powers. She can leave the ruins because she does some plotting to try and lure the monk Andale towards the tome that gets people lured to the ruins, but I guess she needs to possess a Kish person to
in order to fully leave.
Powers.
Yeah.
All right, maybe, but it's clear that Abigail's the person who was creating these summoning circles that are bringing undead and demons and monsters into these ruins. You do fight one demon boss in Chapter 3. And I think a dragon boss soon after. I think those are the 2 Chapter 3 bosses. And for me, the most challenging encounter in the game was the one right before Abigail, where you fight sort of like 3 evil versions of the 3 party members called I think they're called the Witch Kings.
Yes, they're awesome. I love this.
It's the coolest fight in the game and the most interesting fight in the game, but I also died to them. I think I died to them twice and beat them on the 3rd time, but those 2 times were arduous. You roll some dice to see how badly they ambush you, and on one of my unsuccessful runs, they got 8 free turns before I got to act.
Oh,
that's right.
And another time they envenomated 2 of my characters, which is basically a poison that I don't think you can cure normally. Or at least I didn't have the means to cure. They really were rough on you. I finally got to I finally beat them when I just really went all out in trying to eliminate the Freya Witch King, just so I could have a 3-2 advantage to slowly chip away at. But yeah, that's the best fight in the game, but also the one that gave me the most trouble.
Absolutely. I do love when a game presents you with that, though, where basically you're
to fight the dark versions.
Yeah, it's the Dark Link. You know, it's yeah. You know, when the most difficult fight in the game is like, yeah, you've had some tough scrapes, but what about yourself? What about your inner struggle? And so I really like the Witch King dynamic with that.
My favorite version of this is fighting Vise, Aina, and Fina in Skies of Arcadia. And I think they're only in the Skies of Arcadia Legends version, actually, but still, like fighting the the mirror version of yourself. It can be done really well in video games, and this is a great version of it. But yeah, the Witch Kings were probably the most interesting fight in the game to me. Also the most challenging. It's a great balance to strike. And I think if I were to run through a new game or New Game Plus, I would maybe try to farm some more of their weapons, because I use like every single item they gave me for the for the final boss. Because again, and you fight Abigail, aka the Crimson Shroud itself, right after the Witch Kings.
Abigail, the sort of ending and conclusion that you come to, it's a cool fight, and it's maybe the one part of the game where I'm like, I wish they might have had a little bit of a bigger budget to be able to animate this and really give it its full grandeur, but it's not, you know, it's not a deal breaker.
I mean, I know she's called the Crimson Shroud, and she's basically this sort of vaguely formless red bloody apparition. But because it was this flowy red thing on top of a sort of a brown or black pedestal, I really thought it looked like a red coat on a coat rack. I really thought that exact thought occurred to me fighting her.
It's just Carmen Sandiego. Like, it's just Carmen Sandiego lounging around, and you're just seeing, like...
Not even Carmen Sandiego lounging. Like, Carmen Sandiego is in her den in sweatpants while
right.
I'm fighting her trench coat that is in her hall closet.
Exactly. Completely.
After you do defeat Abigail, and you do defeat Abigail sort of wins in the end, because most of this story is a captured or escaped Freya relaying this to Flint, who's trying to track down the Crimson Shroud on the orders of the Senate. And when when Flint gets word that his army is tracked down where Lippy and Jacques are, he gets down to the ruins, and it's I'm not sure if Freya was already there or he takes Freya with him to the ruins. But Abigail, who we should mention looks exactly like Freya, and is interested in, taking over Freya's body, which I think we did mention. Jacques and Lippy are holding back Abigail so she can't possess Freya, and Freya escaped only to be captured by Flint. But with Flint's arrival, it's enough of a distraction or enough of a disruption for Abigail to slip by Jacques and Lippy and succeed in her plan. But basically, the bad guy wins in the first ending of the game. And she gets to exact her 1,000 years of planned revenge on the world that had wiped out her civilization. Or at least that's what I hope she does, because I mean, what else is she going to do? I mean,
yeah, I think she wanted her revenge. Was basically most of that.
Yeah, and I forget what it is that I forget what it is that ends the first playthrough. There's some sort of line that they end it, and I can't remember what it is now, but it's just so haunting, and it gives it such a full-bodied sort of creep up your spine. When you get to that ending, you're just like, this is not working out well for anybody but Abigail, but I'm kind of okay with it.
Yeah, you get an image of Lippy, Jacques, and Flint sort of like with their arms against an invisible barrier, like hitting it like some kind of desperate mime. While Abigail sort of is sashaying away with her hips to one side, like Freya's permanent pose in her little game piece form. That always made me think that Freya like might have a back problem or something, because like, she's always in this curved shape pose for the entire game, and I'm like, oh man, that can't be comfortable. That's too bad. But it's a bit of a bleak ending, but also kind of like cool bleak.
Yeah, that would be how I describe it. It was kind of a cool wham ending.
It's the kind of bleak ending where you're like, you know what? I'm cool with that. I don't... And with this being a shorter RPG and such, I don't really need... I don't need a Persona-style wrap-up, you know, where it's a few hours of kind of the denouement, whatever, and the everyone kind of having their loose ends tied up. This one's just like, no. Nothing is tied, and chaos will reign. Have fun.
Yeah, you don't need to like Dragon Quest VII visit every important NPC to see how they're doing before things end nice and neat. This is a vague, bleak ending with the implication that the world might face an apocalypse because of this 1,000-year-old sorceress.
Right, and yeah, it makes you not really care about doing a New Game Plus ending where there is more, you know, things are kind of more tied up. The loose ends are no longer loose and such.
Yeah, it's a happier ending, but it's not, to me. I kind of feel like the first one's more impactful.
Yeah, and I mean, I'm not sure I can think of a video game where the intimidation factor of a character and how unintimidating their name has such a disparity, because Abigail is not a cool world-ending sorceress name, I'm afraid.
Well, there's Chester in Ys 3.
Yeah, Chester in Ys 3 Chester is a very uncool name for that cool character. That is exactly the same kind of vibe. And Abigail, the video game Abigail I'm most familiar with is the boss from Final Fight, who's like a giant Mad Max clown man. Different Abigail from Crimson Shroud for sure. And I was surprised to see Abigail of all people show up in Street Fighter V. But that's an entirely different genre. Or actually no, even did we decide Street Fighter V was an RPG a few weeks ago?
Of course.
Maybe we did. Yeah. All right. Okay. Anyway, back to Street Fighter. All right. This is now a Street Fighter podcast. What are your thoughts on the recent patch? Do we think that that Ryu's like forward punch V skill is too broken or not?
You know what? They better not patch out the Danfinite. That's all I can say.
I don't know, like that Punko Dan that you see online. That feels a little unfair. I think Dan is due for a nerf. But okay. Anyway. Back to Crimson Shroud. Back to this Abigail and not the Capcom Abigail. All right. So we like most of the storytelling in this game. We like a lot of the RPG mechanics in this game and the tabletop flavor of this game. I think we also like the Hitoshi Sakimoto OST in this game, don't we?
Yes, it's a very good OST.
It really felt like Final Fantasy Tactics at times, like even down to like there were licks that sounded like FF Tactics licks.
Absolutely. I mean, it's, and we had mentioned this with Muramasa as well. When you get a Sakimoto score, it's always going to be at least very good. And this one's this one isn't any different. It is very tactics influenced, but just like with the game itself, it just feels like it feels like it could be a slice of Ivalice with the tags, with it being like an off-brand Ivalice story.
I was going to ask you, is this a secret Ivalice game?
Even the art style is very reminiscent, actually.
Yeah.
To a degree.
Yeah.
I don't think it is specifically, but like you could fool me into it. Like it would, like it could totally be a Gaiden chapter of an Ivalice story.
Mm-hmm.
And I think so much of that is, one, with it being a Matsuno thing, but also it being a localization done by Alexander O. Smith and Joseph Reeder, who localized Vagrant Story and FF12. And so they kind of...
I think also the War of the Lions version of FF Tactics, right?
That was Tom Slattery, I believe.
Oh, my bad. Okay.
They may have been consulted on it, but there's such a particular tone that they have, and for anyone who's played FF12, that is, people have their feelings on the story, but I don't think anyone is going to knock the English localization. It's pretty close to impeccable.
Yeah, it's a pretty solid localization.
No arguments from me. It's excellent, and I was mistaken. It looks like Smith did work on the Tactics Ogre game that you and I played last year.
That's right.
but not the War of the Lions version of FF Tactics. He has worked on several other Final Fantasy games in the past. But I hope listeners, I hope you are at least picking up on this. But while we have our frustrations with this game, and while it's brief at definitely under 15 hours for even a complete second playthrough, we're very positive on this. There are so many interesting parts of Crimson Shroud that I'm not going to leave you angry voicemails insisting that you blow $8 on the 3DS eShop to play it. But I think this gets a recommendation from me. Like it's not very long, and it's interesting and cool. And when I finished it, it didn't. I said the same thing about Muramasa last month, but this game didn't wear out its welcome for me. Like I was left interested in continuing to play it, and not left glad it was over. And that's a about as high a compliment as I can pay to a video game now, because I mean I'm 35 years old. I'm an adult that has less time on his hands than a bored teenager. But I don't want to put words in either of your mouths. Is this also a recommend from both of you? You go first, Audra.
I would say so. I really enjoyed it overall. I mean, I spent more hours than I feel like I needed to on the random item drops, but even that wasn't enough to really deter me from really liking the game. I played through it.
I mean, yeah, and you had played this game before we planned it for the podcast, so you did 2 runs again after doing 2 runs some years ago. So that's about as strong as an endorsement as I can think of.
Oh yeah, it's definitely, to me, I think, a fun game. I like a lot of the creativity with it and the tabletop elements, and the story is just good.
Yeah, and I mean, I fall in a very similar place with it. I love Matsuno, and I love kind of this team. The sort of Ivalice feel is one of my favorite things, and so if I can just get like a little the what'd you say, the fried shrimp or the
calamari appetizer.
Yes.
If Ivalice is the whole 7-course meal, this is an amuse-bouche.
Absolutely. If I can get that for a few hours, that's perfect. So, yeah, it does have this big flaw with its key item drops, but the mechanics are strong, the story is interesting. It's a fun little budget title.
Mm-hmm.
I would love to play an anthology style series of short RPGs like this. What would we call them? The guild collection, I guess, on the eShop is kind of accomplishing that. But I mean, if every guild game was as good as this and as well written as this, it would be one of the great video game accomplishments of the 2010s. But as such, it seems like the guild games are at least interesting and unusual, and Crimson Shroud being particularly good among them, because I thought this game was great, and I really feel like it was like Matsuno's idea for a tabletop campaign that he wrote up and wanted to tell a specific story and give players the feel of moving pieces around a board and throwing dice for almost every action. And it's what a strange confluence of ideas that mostly works. It's an accomplishment.
Yeah.
So, Eva, am I assuming that Square Enix should just continue to, or at least should just give Matsuno as much money as he wants to make whatever he wants? Because that's the end goal here. Matsuno deserves great teams and infinite budgets, but I'm not sure he'll ever get one again.
Yeah, it's one of those. It's definitely one of those things where it's like I think he is brilliant. I just want him to be happy, and so if he is happy making fabulous quests for Final Fantasy XIV at this point, and that's just where he's at, that is okay with me.
Yeah, I think Matsuno is probably more in a space for short time games like Crimson Shroud, and iterative and like instance content like the quest lines he's written for FF14, which are more than just one now, because he did the Evilise raids for Stormblood, and now the relic weapons quests in Shadowbringers. I think they're keeping him quite busy over there on the FF14 team, and I love Matsuno's work. I celebrate him, but I don't think he's ever going to get that FF12 blank check ever again, which is sort of disappointing, but also you kind of get it.
Yeah, I'm curious about his unsung story. I think it's
that was that was that a Kickstarter project that had its own trials and tribulations?
Yeah.
I don't really know where exactly that is now and how involved he is. It's like he doesn't really talk about it, but in the promotional materials for it, they still mention that he's a designer.
Yeah.
I'm not sure we should consider Unsung Story as part of Matsuno's oeuvre at the level of a Crimson Shroud, or certainly not level of an FF12 or a Vagrant Story. No. But Crimson Shroud, that's 3 endorsements for a very interesting game that is curiously only available on the 3DS eShop, which still blows my mind a little bit. But
I know they should add it to the Switch.
Yeah. There are touch elements that I think are valuable in Crimson Shroud, but I would think a port is possible, right? I'm not crazy to think that.
No, I would think so.
And it's definitely had enough time, because this game came out 9 years ago. I was glad that the eShop was still around for me to download this game, because I downloaded it earlier this year in probably January or so, and now I'm worried about how long that 3DS eShop might last because of recent news from Sony and others. But speaking of those Sony eShops, I recently went on the PSN on my PS3 to download Suikoden 3, because that's the game we're playing this month for the podcast. Suikoden 3, a PS2 RPG, curiously only available on the PS3 PlayStation Store and not the Vita or PS4 PlayStation stores. It's odd choice, but then that's how I'm playing it for the podcast next week. I'm still very early on, so I have a busy weekend ahead of me full of Suikoden 3. And listeners, I hope you enjoyed our future discussion on Suikoden 3 because let me tell you, there are people in RPG Fan excited to play and talk about Suikoden. Suikoden fans are Suikoden fans aren't overwhelming in number, but they are passionate. And whenever RPG Fan posts Suikoden anything, Eva, you can probably anecdotally attest to this being part of the social media team. Like it gets a response. People love their Suikoden.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, it's one of the things that gets the most hits on social media. If we post something about Suikoden, especially like Suikoden 2, Suikoden 3, Suikoden 5, people will lose it.
And
in a good way.
Coincidentally, those are the other two Suikoden games, 2 and 5, that we have played for the podcast. So I guess if they're the most popular trio in the series, Suikoden 3 was a logical next step. But anyway, those Suikoden 3 episodes are going to be the last 2 weeks in April. Coming up in May, we are doing 4 episodes about something that's a little bit more my speed. That's Dragon Quest. We're going to have 2 episodes about Dragon Quest IV, that NES game that had remakes for, let's see, PlayStation in Japan only, then on the DS worldwide, and then mobile worldwide. So there's plenty of ways to play Dragon Quest IV, and we'll see exactly how we're playing it and what we think about it next month on Retro Encounter. We're doing 2 other episodes about other Dragon Quest topics, but they are somewhat still in the planning stages. But please look forward to our special Dragon Quest 35th anniversary episodes coming in May. But listeners, if you want to email us about Suikoden 3 or Dragon Quest 4 or Crimson Shroud 1, the best way to do so is to email retro@rpgfan.com. You can also comment on rpgfan.com's message boards or visit our Facebook page, our Instagram page, our Discord server, our Twitter page, our YouTube channel, our Twitch channel, something streaming every day on Twitch. Things occasionally posted to YouTube, although I think we're somewhat more active on Twitch than YouTube. And we also have we have 3 other fine podcasts, 4 podcasts total, including Random Encounter every 2 weeks about randomness, Rhythm Encounter every 2 weeks about RPG music, and Phoenix Edge every 1 week, mostly focused on current events. You can review Retro Encounter or those other 3 podcasts on iTunes, Google Play, Spotify. We're basically everywhere. Please listen to us. Please leave feedback. We appreciate all the feedback you're willing to provide. But if you want to provide feedback to us at an individual level, let's tell you, the listener, how to find us, the podcaster, starting with you, Eva.
So you can find me in general on RPG Fan's social media accounts, Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook, and you can find me personally on Twitter and Instagram as @EVA_LEES.
All right, and Audra, I have a feeling your online presence isn't quite like Eva's or mine, but how can listeners find you?
Pretty much through my email, audrab@rpgfan.com.
I am jealous of you, Audra, because you have not been poisoned by the hell well of Twitter the way that I have.
It scares me.
Your fear is justified because it ain't great over there, let me tell you. But in listeners, if you want to find me over there, you can. I am at The Real Monsoon most of the time, at Evoker for Dogs other times. That is a convoluted Soul Calibur reference and a convoluted Persona reference in each of those screen names. But you can also find me on the RPG Fan Discord as Monsoon Mike. But thank you, listeners, for listening. Thank you, Eva and Audra, for talking. Now it's time for me to be thanking. Thank you, good night, and good luck.